My daughter married a terminally ill man everyone pitied. He could barely walk, trembled, swallowed handfuls of pills. But I, a retired fraud investigator, smelled a scam. At midnight, I checked his medicine cabinet. Every bottle contained empty fake capsules. He was faking it all to collect a huge $850,000 insurance payout. At our family barbecue, I made him stand up from the wheelchair in front of everyone and walk perfectly on healthy legs. The con was exposed. Justice is coming. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Edward Porter. I'm 68 years old, living in Phoenix, Arizona. Spent 38 years as an insurance claims investigator before retiring 3 years ago. I thought I'd seen every scam in the book. Turns out the most elaborate fraud was waiting for me at home. The wedding was on a bright May afternoon. My daughter Rebecca, my only child, was marrying Michael Turner. They'd known each other for exactly 4 months. 4 months. When I raised concerns about the rush, Rebecca gave me that look. The one that says, "Dad, you're being overprotective again." But this wasn't about being overprotective. Something felt wrong from the start. Michael had what doctors called progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, a rare neurodegenerative disease, terminal, 2 to 3 years left, they said. He was slowly losing motor functions, developing tremors, struggling with balance. Rebecca met him at a charity event where he was speaking about living with a terminal diagnosis. She fell for the brave, dying man who faced his fate with a smile. I watched him at the wedding, 34 years old, handsome in that polished way that makes people trust you instantly. He moved carefully, like every step required concentration. His hands trembled when he held things. Rebecca hovered nearby, ready to help, the perfect picture of a devoted bride caring for her suffering groom. But I'm trained to notice details. It's not paranoia when you've spent 4 decades catching people who lie for money. During the reception, I stood near the bar, watching Michael from across the room. He was talking to his best man, laughing at some joke. His champagne glass was in his right hand, the hand that supposedly trembled uncontrollably, except right then, when he thought nobody was paying attention, that glass was perfectly steady. Rock solid. He took a sip, lowered it, and the moment someone approached, the tremor returned. My stomach tightened. I'd seen hundreds of PSP cases in my career. The tremor doesn't come and go. It's constant, progressive, merciless. Later that evening, during dinner, I sat next to Michael. Rebecca was mingling with guests, glowing with happiness. Michael leaned toward me, his voice dropping to that confidential tone people use when sharing something important. "Edward, I want you to know how much I appreciate you accepting me into the family," he said. His hand shook slightly as he adjusted his napkin. "Especially given my situation, I've made sure Rebecca will be taken care of. I have a disability insurance policy, $850,000. When I become fully incapacitated, she'll have security." $850,000. That's very thoughtful, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "When did you set that up?" "About a month ago. My doctor helped me expedite the paperwork, given my diagnosis." He smiled sadly. "I wanted everything in place before the wedding." A month ago, after his diagnosis. No insurance company writes a policy like that for someone already diagnosed with a terminal illness. It's like buying fire insurance while your house is burning. I excused myself and stepped outside. The Arizona evening air was cooling down, but my mind was heating up. Either Michael Turner had found the world's most incompetent insurance company, or something was very wrong. I pulled out my phone and called an old colleague, Susan Crawford, who still worked claims at Desert Valley Insurance. The call went to voicemail. I left a message asking her to check if they'd written any recent disability policies for a Michael Turner. When I returned inside, Rebecca caught my arm. "Dad, isn't he wonderful? I know it's fast, but when someone has limited time—" "He seems very nice," I said carefully. "I see that look," she said, her smile fading. "You think I'm making a mistake." "I didn't say that. You don't have to. You've had that investigator face on all day." She crossed her arms. "Michael is sick, Dad. He needs support, not suspicion." "Rebecca, no. For once, can you just be happy for me? Can you turn off the investigator brain and be my father? She walked away before I could respond. I stood there, watching Michael across the room. He was struggling to stand up from his chair, one hand gripping the table. Two guests rushed to help him. He thanked them with that brave, grateful smile. But I'd seen him, earlier, when he thought no one was looking. That glass hadn't trembled at all. The next morning, Susan called me back. Edward, I checked our system. Michael Turner, policy written 3 weeks ago. Disability coverage for $850,000. Filed a claim 2 days ago. 2 days ago, before the wedding. Filed it the morning of his wedding, actually, claiming his condition has deteriorated to the point where he needs full-time care. I thanked her and hung up. My phone buzzed immediately, a text from Rebecca. Michael and I are moving into your place. Easier for me to take care of him. We'll be there this afternoon. Love you, Dad. I stared at the message. They were moving in. Into my house, where I could watch every move Michael Turner made. Maybe this wasn't such a bad development after all. They arrived that afternoon with 3 suitcases and a folder of medical documents. Michael moved slowly up the walkway to my house, one hand on Rebecca's arm. I carried their bags upstairs to the guest room, now their room. Thank you, Edward, Michael said, slightly out of breath. I know this isn't ideal, having newlyweds move in. Family takes care of family, I replied, watching his face. Over the next 2 weeks, I observed, that's what investigators do. We observe, document, and wait for patterns to emerge. Michael was good, very good. Around Rebecca, he was the perfect patient. Slow movements, visible effort in every action. He'd pause halfway up the stairs, breathing hard. He'd fumble with his coffee cup, and Rebecca would steady his hand. He took 6 different medications, lined up on the bathroom counter. Azilect, Mirapex, Cinemet, all standard PSP treatments. But I'd catch moments, little moments. When Rebecca was at work, I'd see him through my home office window. One afternoon, I watched him walk across the backyard to get something from their car. No tremor, no hesitation, smooth, confident strides. The moment he heard the back door, he transformed, shoulders slumping, steps uncertain. I remembered my own father, who'd actually had Parkinson's, similar symptoms to PSP. I remembered how he'd struggled to lift a fork near the end, how every movement became a battle. This wasn't that. This was performance. There was a time when Rebecca and I were close. Really close. After her mother left, when Rebecca was 12, it was just the 2 of us. I taught her to play chess on quiet Sunday mornings. We'd spend hours at the Phoenix Zoo, her favorite place, inventing stories about the animals. She'd inherited my analytical mind, my love of puzzles. When had that changed? I traced it back to her college years, when she'd started volunteering at shelters, bringing home every stray cause. She'd always had a big heart, but somewhere along the way, her empathy became a vulnerability. She stopped questioning people's motives. She just wanted to help, to fix, to save. Michael had spotted that. I was sure of it now. He'd found a kind woman with a trusting heart, and a father who'd just retired from a lucrative career. The perfect mark. One night, 2 weeks after they'd moved in, I couldn't sleep. It was past midnight. I lay in bed, listening to the house settle, thinking about that steady champagne glass, about insurance fraud, about my daughter sleeping next to a man I was increasingly certain was a professional con artist. I got up, moved quietly down the hall. Their bedroom door was closed, no light underneath. I could hear soft snoring. Michael's. The bathroom was across from their room. I slipped inside, closing the door silently. The medication bottles were lined up on the counter, labels facing out. Neat, organized. I picked up the Azilect bottle and opened it. Empty gelatin capsules. Clear, hollow shells. No medication inside. My hands didn't shake as I opened the others. Mirapex, empty capsules. Cinemet, empty capsules. All 6 bottles, all fake. I photographed everything with my phone, making sure the labels were clear in each shot. Then I replaced them exactly as they'd been. In the bathroom trash, under tissues and dental floss, I found a plastic card. Meditech Solutions, Tempe, Arizona. It looked official, but something about the font, the cheap plastic, felt wrong. The next morning, I told Rebecca I had errands to run. I drove to Tempe, found the address on the card. It was a small office in a strip mall, wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. The window said Medical Documentation Services. I walked in. A bored-looking woman at the desk glanced up. "I'm looking for medical record services," I said. "We provide documentation for $3,000, she replied, her tone suggesting she'd given this speech many times. Doctor's reports, lab results, imaging studies, full medical histories. You create them? She looked at me more carefully. We compile them from existing medical data. What if someone doesn't have existing medical data for a specific condition? Her expression hardened. I think you should leave. I left. I'd gotten my answer. For $3,000, Michael Turner had bought a terminal diagnosis. I drove home in a fog of cold anger, not the hot rage that makes you stupid, the ice-cold fury that makes you focused. 38 years investigating fraud had taught me patience, had taught me that the best way to catch a con artist isn't to confront them. It's to let them think they're winning until the moment you spring the trap. That evening I asked Rebecca to talk, just the two of us. Michael was upstairs, supposedly resting. I showed her the photos, the empty capsules, the card from Meditech Solutions. Her face went white, then red. You went through his medications? Rebecca, those aren't medications. They're empty. You invaded his privacy. You broke into our bathroom and went through his personal belongings. Her voice was rising. Do you hear yourself? You're so desperate to find something wrong that you're inventing conspiracies. I'm not inventing. Michael is sick. He has real doctors, real diagnoses, real medical records. Tears were streaming down her face now. You're lonely, Dad. I get it. You're alone in this big house, and you've spent so long looking for fraud that you see it everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. Just listen. No, you listen. I love him. He's dying, and I'm going to spend whatever time he has left making him happy. And if you can't accept that, if you're going to keep accusing him of being a con artist, then maybe we need to find somewhere else to live. She stormed upstairs. I heard their bedroom door slam. I sat in my living room, holding my phone with the photos that she'd refused to even look at. My daughter thought I was paranoid, a lonely old man seeing shadows. But I'd seen Michael's steady hand holding that champagne glass. I'd seen him walk across the backyard with perfect coordination. I'd held those empty pill bottles in my hands. My daughter might not believe me, but she would. Eventually, she'd see the truth. I just needed to show her in a way that left no room for doubt, no possibility of denial. I needed proof so overwhelming that even love couldn't blind her to it. The question was, how? I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a report, not documentation, a plan. Because if Michael Turner thought he could con my daughter, steal hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance money, and break my little girl's heart without consequences, he was about to learn what it meant to be investigated by someone who'd spent 4 decades mastering the art of exposing liars. I'd spent my career protecting strangers from fraud. Now I'd do whatever it took to protect the one person who mattered most. Game on, Michael Turner, game on. The days following my confrontation with Rebecca were instructive. She avoided me. Michael, however, became friendlier. Almost too friendly. "Edward, I want to apologize," he said one morning, finding me in my workshop where I restore antique clocks. He leaned against the doorframe, his hand gripping it for support. The performance never stopped. "Rebecca told me about your concerns. I understand. If I had a daughter, I'd be protective too." I looked up from the 1847 mantel clock I was working on, its brass gears spread across my workbench. "It's fine, Michael." "No, it's not." He shuffled into the room, each step deliberate and shaky. "You've opened your home to us. You deserve peace of mind. If you want to see my medical records, I'll have my doctor send them over." "That won't be necessary." "I insist." His smile was warm, genuine. If I didn't know better, I'd believe him myself. I don't want any tension in this family. After he left, I sat there thinking. He was offering to show me medical records because he knew they'd be convincing. More fake documents from Meditech Solutions, probably. Each one reinforcing the lie, making Rebecca's faith in him seem more justified. Smart. Very smart. Over the next week, I watched them more carefully. Not obviously. I'd been an investigator too long to tip my hand. But I watched. Michael had a pattern. When Rebecca was home, he was the devoted patient. Weak, grateful, constantly referencing his limitations. "Sweetheart, could you help me with this?" "I'm sorry, I'm so much trouble." "I wish I could do more for you." Rebecca would rush to help, her face full of love and sadness and guilt. So much guilt. Like somehow his illness was her burden to bear alone. But when she left for her volunteer work at the animal shelter, 3 afternoons a week, Michael transformed. Not completely. He was too careful for that. But I'd catch moments. One afternoon I watched from my bedroom window as he walked to the mailbox. No shuffle. No hesitation. Just a normal walk. He grabbed the mail, sorted through it quickly, then seemed to remember himself. The shuffle returned as he walked back to the house. Another time I heard him on the phone in the guest room. I stood in the hallway, not even pretending I wasn't listening. "Yeah, I'm golden. Another week, maybe 2. Then the policy pays out." "No, she's completely sold. The father's suspicious, but she thinks he's paranoid." "What can he do?" "I've got documents, symptoms, the whole package. By August, I'll be in the Caymans, and this whole thing is history." My hands clenched into fists. August. 2 months away. He was planning to take the money and disappear, leaving Rebecca with a broken heart and probably some legal liability. I couldn't confront him. Rebecca wouldn't believe me. She'd made that abundantly clear. And if I pushed too hard, he might bolt early. No, I needed something undeniable. Something that would make even Rebecca's desperate hope shatter. That evening at dinner, I watched them together. Michael ate slowly, his hand trembling as he lifted his fork. Rebecca cut his meat into smaller pieces without him asking. They'd developed this rhythm, this dance of caregiver and patient. "How was your day, Dad?" Rebecca asked, clearly trying to bridge the distance between us. "Fine. Worked on some clocks." "That's nice." She paused. "Michael's doctor appointment is tomorrow. They're evaluating him for a wheelchair. The disease is progressing faster than expected." Of course it was. The closer to the payout, the worse the symptoms became. "That's unfortunate," I said neutrally. Michael gave me a brave smile. "It's okay, Edward. I've accepted my fate. I just want to make sure Rebecca's taken care of when I'm gone. That insurance policy will give her security." I nearly laughed. The audacity of this man, sitting in my house, eating my food, lying to my daughter about dying, while planning to steal nearly $1 million and disappear. The sheer arrogance of it. But I just nodded. "That's thoughtful of you." After they went upstairs, I sat in my living room with a glass of scotch. I needed help. Professional help. Someone who could dig deeper than I could, who could get information I couldn't access. I pulled out my phone and searched for private investigators in Phoenix. I needed someone discreet, experienced, and most importantly, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions about why a retired insurance investigator needed help investigating his own son-in-law. I found a firm called Rodriguez Investigations, 5-star reviews, specializing in domestic cases, fraud, background checks. The owner, Victor Rodriguez, was a former Phoenix PD detective with 20 years on the force. The next morning I called. Victor's voice was gravelly but professional. "Rodriguez Investigations." "Mr. Rodriguez, my name is Edward Porter. I need to hire you for surveillance and background investigation." "What's the situation?" "I believe my son-in-law is committing insurance fraud, faking a terminal illness to collect on a disability policy." There was a pause. "That's a serious allegation." "I have preliminary evidence, empty medication bottles, connections to a fake medical document company. But I need more. I need proof that would hold up legally. I charge $4,500 for a comprehensive investigation. That includes surveillance, background checks, financial records where legally obtainable, and a detailed report with photographic evidence." $4,500, a significant amount. But what was money compared to protecting my daughter? "When can you start?" "I can meet you this afternoon to discuss details." We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't risk being seen. Victor Rodriguez was in his mid-40s, built like someone who still hit the gym regularly, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything. I showed him the photos of the empty pill bottles, explained about Meditech Solutions, described the inconsistencies I'd observed. Victor listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he leaned back. You know what you're asking for could destroy your daughter's marriage. That marriage is already built on lies. I'm just making sure the truth comes out before he destroys her financially and emotionally. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll need everything you have. Full name, date of birth, if you know it, vehicle description, daily routine. I'll start surveillance tomorrow. I gave him everything. Michael Turner, 34 years old, or so he claimed. Drove a 2023 Honda Accord Silver. Usually left the house around 10 in the morning when Rebecca was at work. Returned by 2. I'll get you answers, Victor said, one way or another. 4 days later, Victor called. We need to meet, not at your house. We met at the same coffee shop. This time Victor brought a tablet and a manila folder. Your instincts were correct, he said, sliding the tablet across to me. Michael Turner isn't even his real name. On the screen was a gym security camera photo. Michael in athletic wear, running on a treadmill, not walking, not shuffling, running. Full speed, sweat pouring down his face, completely healthy. When was this taken? Yesterday morning, East Thomas Road Fitness Center. He's there 3 times a week. Runs for 45 minutes, then does weight training. This morning I watched him bench press 66 pounds for 3 sets. A man with PSP couldn't lift a coffee cup without trembling. I stared at the photo. There it was. Undeniable proof. There's more. Victor opened the folder. Michael Turner is an alias. His real name is Michael Dallas Crawford. 34 years old, originally from San Diego. He has a criminal record. He slid across a background check report. I scanned it quickly. Arrested in California in 2019 for insurance fraud. Convinced an elderly woman he was her grandson, gained access to her accounts, stole $47,000. Pled guilty to a reduced charge, got probation. He's done this before, I said quietly. Multiple times, we think. There are similar cases in Nevada and Oregon that match his pattern, but nothing was ever proven. He's careful, uses different names, different stories. But the core scam is always the same. Gain someone's trust, fake a crisis, steal money, disappear. And my daughter is his latest target. Victor nodded. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Wasn't it, though? Hadn't I known from that first moment at the wedding? Hadn't I seen through him immediately? What else have you found? Financial records show he paid $7,800 to a company called Actorspace LA last December. It's an acting school that specializes in method acting and physical character work. He literally took classes on how to fake being sick. Looks that way. I've also been monitoring his movements. When your daughter is at work, he goes to the gym, meets with someone at a coffee shop downtown, I got photos of that too, and makes frequent calls on a burner phone. He's planning something, and based on the timeline of his insurance claim, I'd guess he's planning to cash out and vanish within the next month. I sat back, processing everything. I had the evidence. I could go to the police right now, show them this, and Michael would be arrested. But would that help Rebecca? She'd blame herself. She'd think she should have seen it. The trauma would be different, but just as damaging. No. If I was going to expose Michael Crawford, it needed to be in a way that left no room for doubt. Rebecca needed to see with her own eyes who she'd married. I need you to keep investigating, I said. Document everything. I need to know his exact plan, his timeline, everyone he's in contact with. What are you planning? I thought about that. What was I planning? Revenge? Justice? Protection? All of the above. I'm going to give him enough rope to hang himself, I said, but I need all the facts first. Victor agreed to continue surveillance. As I drove home, my mind was racing. I needed a lawyer, someone who understood insurance fraud, who could advise me on how to proceed legally. I called Gerald Bennett the next morning. Gerald specialized in insurance disputes and had testified as an expert witness in dozens of fraud cases. We'd never met, but his reputation was solid. Mr. Porter, how can I help you? I explained the situation. Gerald listened, asked detailed questions about the policy, the evidence, Michael's background. Here's the problem, he said finally. If we go to the police now, Crawford might flee. He's done it before. And even if they arrest him, your daughter is legally married to him. She could face financial liability for his debts, possibly even criminal exposure if prosecutors decide she was complicit. She had no idea. You and I know that, but proving it in court, that's harder. The cleanest solution is to expose him publicly in a way that forces him to reveal himself while witnesses are present. Then law enforcement gets involved with clear evidence. Your daughter is obviously a victim, and Crawford has no escape route. How do I do that? Gerald was quiet for a moment. You need a situation where his guard is down, where he's comfortable. Then you need to create conditions that make him break character, with enough witnesses that there's no ambiguity about what happened. An idea began forming, a family gathering, something public but personal. Somewhere with enough people that Michael couldn't claim it was a misunderstanding, but intimate enough that Rebecca would be there to see it. The 4th of July, I said. I host a barbecue every year. Big event, lots of people. Friends, neighbors, former colleagues. That could work. You'd need to invite specific people. Maybe someone from the insurance company to document his condition, a medical expert who could testify later. And you'd need a way to make him reveal himself naturally. He's filed for a wheelchair, I said, remembering. Claims his condition is deteriorating. What if the wheelchair becomes part of the trap? We spent the next hour planning. Gerald would help coordinate the legal aspects. I would handle the logistics. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, exactly. Purpose. Michael Crawford thought he was running a simple con. Marry a trusting woman, fake a disease, collect the insurance money, disappear. He'd done it before. Why wouldn't it work again? Because this time his mark had a father who'd spent 38 years catching people exactly like him. I made one more call that afternoon, to Susan Crawford at Desert Valley Insurance. Susan, it's Edward Porter. I need to ask a favor. It's about that policy we discussed, the one for Michael Turner. What do you need? I need you to slow down the approval process, and I need to know exactly when he's scheduled to receive the payout, if it's approved. Edward, what's going on? Insurance fraud, major case. I'm building evidence, but I need time. Susan was quiet for a long moment. This is the guy who married your daughter? Yes. I'll help. The policy review can be delayed for additional medical verification. Standard procedure. That'll buy you at least 4 weeks, maybe 6. Thank you. Edward, get him. People like this, they don't stop unless someone stops them. I hung up and walked to my workshop. The 1847 clock I'd been restoring was finally complete. I'd spent weeks on it, carefully cleaning each gear, adjusting the escapement, polishing the brass until it gleamed. I wound it carefully and set it running. The steady tick-tock filled the quiet room. Timing. That's what this was all about. Michael had his timeline. Collect the money by late July, disappear by August. But now I had mine. 4th of July. Papago Park. Public barbecue with 40 witnesses. I had 5 weeks to prepare. 5 weeks to set the perfect trap. 5 weeks to ensure that when Michael Crawford fell, he fell completely. And that's when I understood exactly how to repay him for what he'd done to my family. The next morning, I approached Rebecca in the kitchen. She was making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. Michael was still upstairs, supposedly sleeping in due to fatigue from the disease. Rebecca, I've been thinking, I said carefully, about what you said, about accepting Michael into the family. She looked up, cautious hope in her eyes. Dad, I want to host our 4th of July barbecue this year. Big event, like we used to do. Invite friends, neighbors. I want Michael to feel welcomed, properly welcomed. The transformation in her face was immediate. Relief flooded through her features. Really? You mean that? I do. It's time I showed him, and you, that I support this marriage. She hugged me, tears in her eyes. Thank you. This means everything. Over her shoulder, I saw Michael appear in the doorway, one hand on the frame for support. His expression was neutral, but I caught something in his eyes. Calculation. Suspicion. Good. Let him wonder. That's very generous, Edward, Michael said, his voice warm but careful. But you don't have to. I insist. 4th of July at Papago Park. We'll make it special. The next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I was the reconciling father, the man who'd seen the error of his ways. I asked Michael about his condition with apparent genuine concern. I helped Rebecca plan the menu. I was, in every visible way, accepting. But underneath, I was building. Victor continued his surveillance. Every gym session documented. Every moment of Michael walking normally when he thought no one was watching. Every phone call on that burner phone, now transcribed. Gerald Bennett prepared the legal framework. We had a plan for what would happen after the public exposure, how to ensure Michael couldn't flee, how to protect Rebecca legally, how to coordinate with law enforcement. Susan Crawford at Desert Valley Insurance provided crucial information. The insurance claim was still under review, but Michael was getting impatient. He'd called the office 3 times in 1 week, each time more agitated about the delay. He's feeling the pressure, Susan told me over the phone. Wants to know why it's taking so long. I told him we needed additional medical verification. How long can you stall? Until the 4th, easily. After that, my supervisors are going to start asking questions. Perfect timing. I scouted Papago Park personally, walking the grounds, identifying the perfect spot. There was a gentle slope near the West Pavilion. At the top, a flat area perfect for setting up food tables. At the bottom, grassy terrain that would be difficult for a wheelchair to navigate. I could see it in my mind. Michael in his wheelchair at the bottom, everyone else gathered at the top. The bait irresistible, the trap inescapable. One evening, about a week before the barbecue, I was in my workshop when Michael appeared. "Edward, can we talk?" I looked up from the clock I was working on, a 1924 anniversary clock that needed a new suspension spring. Of course. He came in slowly, settling into the chair across from my workbench. "I wanted to thank you for the barbecue, for accepting this. You're family now." "Am I?" He studied me. "Because a few weeks ago you seemed convinced I was faking my illness." "I was wrong," I said simply. "Rebecca showed me your medical records. They're comprehensive." More fake documents from Meditech Solutions, I knew, but I let him think I'd been convinced. "I'm glad," he paused. "I know this has been hard for you. Your only daughter, marrying a dying man. It can't be easy." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But I love her, Edward. Whatever time I have left, I want to spend it making her happy." The sincerity in his voice was remarkable. If I didn't know better, I'd believe every word. He really was an exceptional actor. All that money he'd spent on acting classes, $7,800 according to Victor's financial records, had been well invested. "That's all any father wants to hear," I said. He left shortly after. I went back to the clock, but my hands were shaking. Not from nervousness, from controlled rage. 2 days before the barbecue, Rebecca came home with news. "Michael's condition is deteriorating," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He needs a wheelchair full-time now. The doctor prescribed one today." "I'm sorry to hear that. The insurance should cover it. $2,400. "At least that's something," she wiped her eyes. I wish we had more time." I held her while she cried, staring over her shoulder at nothing, my jaw tight. Michael was escalating his symptoms, making himself look worse to speed up the insurance payout. Every deterioration, he claimed, brought him closer to that $850,000. But it also brought him closer to 4th of July. The wheelchair arrived the next day. Michael made a show of how difficult the transition was, how he hated relying on it. Rebecca was devastated. I was grimly satisfied. Let him commit fully to the performance. Let him get comfortable in that wheelchair. It would make what was coming even more spectacular. That evening, Victor called with his final report. "I've got everything," he said. "Gym footage spanning 3 weeks. Photos of him walking normally. Financial records showing the actor space payment. Background check showing his real identity and criminal history. Phone transcripts of him discussing the scam. It's airtight." "Good. I'll need you at the barbecue, but you can't come as a private investigator." "What do you want me to do?" "Come as my second cousin from Tucson. Family gathering. No one will question it." He agreed. I made similar arrangements with Dr. Alan West, a neurologist I'd contacted through Gerald. Dr. West had agreed to attend as a friend from my chess club, which happened to be true. We did play chess together occasionally, and observe Michael throughout the event. Everything was falling into place. every piece moving into position. The night before the 4th of July, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, running through every detail, the setup, the timing, the moment of truth. Rebecca had told me casually that Michael loved the song Eye of the Tiger, said it pumped him up, made him feel strong even when he was weak. She'd played it for him during his bad days. Perfect. I'd arranged for a sound system, music for the party. And at exactly the right moment, that particular song would play. I thought about my daughter, sleeping down the hall next to a man who was planning to rob her and vanish. I thought about all the other victims Michael Crawford had left in his wake. The elderly woman in California, probably others we'd never know about. Tomorrow it ended. Tomorrow everyone would see exactly who Michael Turner really was. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m, the plan crystal clear in my mind. The 4th of July dawned hot and clear, perfect Arizona summer weather. I arrived at Papago Park at noon to set up. Victor arrived first, helping me arrange tables and chairs. We positioned everything exactly as planned. The main food table at the top of the slope, seating areas scattered throughout, but the focal point deliberately placed where Michael would have to navigate uphill to reach it. "You sure about this?" Victor asked quietly as we worked. "Completely." Dr. Allen West arrived around 1. Gray-haired, distinguished, carrying himself with the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades in medicine. We shook hands. "I've reviewed the case file you sent," he said. "If this young man has PSP, I'm the Easter Bunny. I'll know within 5 minutes of observation." Susan Crawford came next, dressed casually but carrying a leather portfolio. "I've brought copies of his insurance claim," she said, "including the medical documentation, all of which I can now confirm are fraudulent." By 2 o'clock, guests were arriving. Neighbors, friends from my chess club, former colleagues from Desert Valley Insurance, Rebecca's friends from the animal shelter. Everyone bringing food, drinks, cheerful conversation. Rebecca and Michael arrived at 2:30. He was in the wheelchair. She was pushing it. As they approached, I saw Michael's face, pale, drawn, the picture of brave suffering. Rebecca looked worried but determined to make this a good day. "Dad," she hugged me. "This is wonderful." "Thank you so much." "Anything for family?" I turned to Michael. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," he said with a weak smile. "But I wouldn't miss this." I introduced them around. Michael played his part flawlessly. Grateful, humble, occasionally wincing as if in pain. People responded with sympathy and admiration. "So brave," someone murmured. "Such a fighter," said another. Dr. West, introduced as my chess partner, shook Michael's hand. "Terrible thing, PSP," he said conversationally. "How long since your diagnosis?" 4 months, Michael replied. "It's been difficult." "I'm sure." Dr. West's eyes were cataloging everything. The lack of genuine tremor, the controlled way Michael held himself, the performance. For 2 hours the party continued. People ate, talked, laughed. Michael stayed mostly in one spot, Rebecca hovering nearby. I watched him carefully. He was getting comfortable, relaxing into the role. At 4:30 I stood and clinked my glass. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" Conversations quieted. People turned toward me. "I want to make a toast," I said, "to family, to Rebecca, my beautiful daughter, and to Michael, who's shown incredible courage in the face of adversity. The main buffet is open at the top table. Please, everyone, help yourselves." People started moving toward the slope. The food table was positioned perfectly at the top, loaded with ribs, corn, watermelon, all the 4th of July classics. Rebecca started pushing Michael's wheelchair toward the slope. The grass was thick, slightly uneven. The wheelchair's small front wheels immediately bogged down. "It's okay," Michael said. "I can wait here." "No, you should be up there with everyone." Rebecca pushed harder, but the wheelchair wasn't designed for this terrain. I walked over. "Having trouble?" The grass is too thick," Rebecca said, frustrated. "Don't worry," I said loudly, making sure people could hear. "We'll get some help." "Michael, just sit tight for a moment." I walked to the sound system I'd set up earlier. Victor was standing nearby. Our eyes met. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. I pulled out my phone, selected the track I'd queued up that morning, and hit play. The opening drums of Eye of the Tiger blasted from the speakers. It was loud, energetic, impossible to ignore. The kind of song that gets into your blood and makes you want to move. I watched Michael. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I saw it, a flicker in his eyes, recognition, the song that made him feel strong. The music built. The iconic guitar riff kicked in. Michael's hands gripped the wheelchair armrests. His body tensed. And then, as I knew he would, as the adrenaline and instinct and sheer force of habit took over, Michael Crawford stood up. Not carefully, not with struggle. He stood up smoothly, naturally, and walked up the slope toward the food table. 8 full meters. Strong, confident strides. 0 tremor. 0 hesitation. He was halfway up before he realized what he'd done. The music was still playing, but everyone had gone silent. 43 people were staring at him. Phones were out. People had been taking photos of the party, and now they were capturing this. Michael froze mid-step. His face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, then recognition, then pure panic. The color drained from his cheeks. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Michael?" Rebecca's voice was small, confused. "You're walking?" He looked down at his own legs as if they'd betrayed him. The music, That's quite a recovery," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Though I suppose that makes sense, given that you've been running on treadmills and lifting weights for the past month." His head snapped toward me. For a brief second, the mask dropped completely. I saw cold calculation, then rage, then desperate scrambling for a cover story. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice wavered. "Don't you?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up the gym surveillance photos Victor had sent me. "East Thomas Road Fitness Center. You're there 3 times a week. This photo was taken 5 days ago. You ran for 45 minutes, then bench pressed 66 pounds. I held up the phone. Several guests nearby could see the image clearly. "Edward, what is this?" Rebecca's voice was shaking. "Or should I call you by your real name? Michael Dallas Crawford?" The panic in his eyes intensified. His jaw clenched. "You're insane." Victor stepped forward. "I'm Victor Rodriguez, private investigator. I've been following you for 3 weeks, Mr. Crawford." He opened his portfolio, showing surveillance photos. "You have no symptoms of PSP. You're completely healthy." Susan Crawford moved to stand beside me. "And I'm Susan Crawford from Desert Valley Insurance, the company holding your $850,000 disability claim, which is now frozen pending fraud investigation." Dr. West joined us. "I'm Dr. Alan West, board-certified neurologist. I've been observing you for the past 2 hours. You exhibit none of the clinical signs of progressive supranuclear palsy. Your gait is normal. Your balance is normal. Your eye movements are normal. You're faking." Michael's face had gone from pale to gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hands, those hands that had trembled so convincingly for months, were now steady but clenched into fists. "Rebecca," he turned to her desperately, "don't listen to them. Your father has been paranoid from the start. Is it true?" Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. She was staring at him, tears streaming down her face. "Have you been lying?" "Baby, no, Answer me," her voice cracked. "Are you sick or not?" The silence stretched. Michael looked around, at the phones recording him, at the 43 witnesses, at the evidence being held up, at the trap closing around him with no way out. His shoulders slumped. The fight went out of his eyes. "Rebecca, I can explain." "Are you sick?" "No." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Rebecca made a sound I'll never forget. Not quite a sob, not quite a scream. Pure anguish. She stumbled backward, away from him. Several guests moved to support her. Michael's face cycled through emotions, panic, desperation, and then something darker. Calculation. He was looking for an exit. "This is a setup," he said, his voice rising. "You're all in on this together. It's entrapment." "Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce a crime," I said calmly. "All we did was play music. You chose to stand up and walk. Nobody forced you." He looked around wildly. The crowd had formed a loose circle around us. 43 witnesses with their phones out, recording everything. "I can explain." "Please do," I said. "Explain how you've been running on treadmills 3 times a week. Explain the $7,800 you paid to Actorspace LA for acting lessons. Explain your real name, Michael Dallas Crawford. Explain your 2019 conviction for defrauding an elderly woman in California. Each fact hit him like a physical blow. His face went from gray to green. You, he turned to me, and I saw pure hatred in his eyes. You had no right. I had every right. You married my daughter under false pretenses. You were planning to steal $850,000 and disappear. How many others have you done this to, Michael? He didn't answer. Instead, he bolted. He ran toward the parking lot, showing the athletic ability he'd hidden for months. But I'd planned for this, too. 2 Phoenix PD officers emerged from behind the pavilion. I'd called them before the party started, explained the situation, asked them to stand by. They'd watched the whole thing unfold. Michael Crawford, one officer said, we need you to stop. Michael didn't stop. He tried to dodge around them. The officers weren't rough, but they were efficient. Within seconds, Michael was against a patrol car, being read his rights. You have the right to remain silent. I watched, feeling nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just cold certainty that justice was being served. Rebecca collapsed, not dramatically. She just folded, like her legs stopped working. I caught her before she hit the ground. I'm sorry, she sobbed into my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Dad. You were right. You were right about everything, and I didn't listen. Shh. It's okay. You're okay now. I defended him. I told you that you were paranoid. I chose him over you. You chose to see the best in someone you loved. That's not a flaw, sweetheart. That's who you are. He exploited that. This isn't your fault. Around us, guests were dispersing, some shocked, some satisfied they'd witnessed justice. Victor approached, collecting his surveillance equipment. Susan was on her phone, already reporting to Desert Valley Insurance. Dr. West gave me a respectful nod before departing. The party was over, but the real work was just beginning. The police investigation moved quickly. When fraud is this blatant, with this much evidence, things accelerate. The detective assigned to the case, Maria Santos, came to my house the next morning. Rebecca was upstairs, still processing everything. I'd heard her crying through most of the night. Mr. Porter, I need to take your statement, Detective Santos said. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, professional. Walk me through how you discovered the fraud. I did. Every detail from the wedding champagne glass to the empty pill bottles to hiring Victor Rodriguez. I showed her all my documentation, gave her copies of everything. This is the most thoroughly investigated case I've ever seen from a civilian, she said. You did our job for us. I spent 38 years as an insurance fraud investigator. This was personal. I can tell. She paused. Your daughter, is she going to be okay? Eventually, she's strong, but right now she's devastated. I understand. For what it's worth, Crawford's in custody and he's not getting out. The evidence is overwhelming. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation widened. Police executed a search warrant on Michael's belongings at my house. They found a second burner phone with text messages to someone named Daniel Rich. I'll play the loving husband for another month. Once the insurance pays, I'm on the next flight to Grand Cayman. She'll never see a dime. The text made Rebecca physically sick. I held her hair while she threw up. They also found Michael's real identification documents hidden in a false bottom of his suitcase, passport under his real name, bank statements showing an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, with $300,000 already deposited, presumably from previous scams. The Meditech Solutions owner, a man named Gary Peterson, was arrested. He confessed immediately, giving up Michael and 4 other clients who'd purchased fake medical documentation. The whole operation unraveled. Daniel Rich, the actor who'd played Dr. Myers during one of Michael's fake consultations, was also arrested. He claimed he didn't know it was fraud, thought it was a practical joke on a friend. Nobody believed him. 2 weeks after the barbecue, the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office filed formal charges. Detective Santos called to tell me. Insurance fraud in the first degree, forgery, attempted theft, and fraud in the inducement of marriage. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at up to 12 years in prison. Good. There's more. We contacted California authorities about his 2019 case. Turns out his probation terms included no contact with vulnerable populations and no financial fraud activities. He violated both. California is pursuing probation violation charges. He'll serve time there, too. Rebecca was in the room when I got the call. When I hung up, she looked at me with hollow eyes. 12 years, she said quietly. He would have taken the money and left me within weeks. I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what I did wrong. You did nothing wrong. I married him, Dad. I said vows to him. I was going to spend my life caring for him. She laughed bitterly. Except he was never sick. It was all a lie. Every single moment. I didn't have words for that, so I just held her. The civil side moved simultaneously. Desert Valley Insurance filed a lawsuit against Michael for $47,000, the amount they'd already paid out for his medical treatments and equipment. The wheelchair alone cost $2,400. Gerald Bennett handled the legal paperwork brilliantly. He also did something I hadn't expected. He advised Rebecca to sue Michael for fraud and emotional distress. He can't pay, Rebecca said. He's going to prison. True, Gerald replied. But when he gets out, any money he earns will be subject to judgment. And it sends a message. This behavior has consequences beyond criminal punishment. We filed the civil suit. The damages we requested were modest. $50,000 for emotional distress, plus legal fees. Symbolic more than anything. The local media picked up the story. Insurance fraud exposed at 4th of July BBQ, read one headline. Another, Phoenix man fakes terminal illness to defraud insurance company, father-in-law, reporters called. I refused all interviews. This wasn't about publicity. It was about protecting my daughter. But Susan Crawford gave a statement on behalf of Desert Valley Insurance, warning the public about disability insurance fraud. The story ran in the Arizona Republic, complete with Michael's mugshot. That was satisfying. Seeing his face plastered across the news, labeled as a fraud artist, not the brave dying man, not the tragic figure, just a con artist who got caught. 3 weeks after the barbecue, Gerald Bennett helped Rebecca file for annulment. An annulment is different from divorce, he explained. Divorce acknowledges a valid marriage that's ending. Annulment says the marriage was never valid in the first place because it was obtained through fraud. So legally I was never married to him? Exactly. It's like it never happened. The hearing was brief. The judge reviewed the evidence, the criminal charges, the fake medical documents, Michael's real identity, his history of fraud, and granted the annulment immediately. This court finds clear and convincing evidence that the marriage was procured through fraudulent misrepresentation of material facts. The marriage is annulled as of this date. Mrs. Crawford, you are restored to your maiden name of Porter, Rebecca cried. Relief, shame, grief, all mixed together. Outside the courtroom, she turned to me. I feel like I should have known, should have seen through him. He was a professional, Rebecca. He'd done this before. He studied acting, he practiced. You're not stupid for being fooled by someone who made a career out of fooling people. But you saw through him immediately. I hesitated. I suspected. But suspicion isn't knowledge. I spent weeks gathering proof because even I wasn't certain at first. He was that good. Still, the guilt ate at her. I could see it in how she moved through the house like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping. I made a decision. I called Dr. Linda Stone, a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal. $180 per session, but worth every penny. Your daughter has been through a significant emotional trauma, Dr. Stone told me after Rebecca's first session. She's processing betrayal, shame, and a fundamental violation of trust. This will take time. How long? Months at least, maybe longer. But she's strong, and she has you. That matters more than you know. Rebecca started going twice a week. Slowly, incrementally, I saw small improvements. She started eating regular meals again. She returned to her volunteer work at the animal shelter, though she told me being around the animals helped. They didn't judge, didn't ask questions. I tried to help in my own way. I returned to my workshop, to the antique clocks that had always brought me peace. One evening, I invited Rebecca to join me. I don't know anything about clocks, Dad. Neither did I when I started. Come on, I'll teach you. I showed her the 1924 anniversary clock I'd been working on. This belonged to your great-grandfather. It's been broken for decades, but every piece is still here. It just needs patient hands to put it back together. She picked up a tiny gear, examining it. How do you know which piece goes where? Study the mechanism, understand how it's supposed to work, then fit the pieces together one at a time until the whole thing functions again. We worked in comfortable silence. I showed her how to clean the gears with mineral spirits, how to oil the pivots, how to adjust the escapement. There's something peaceful about this, she said after an hour. Fixing something broken, making it work again. That's why I love it. Things get broken. But with patience and care, they can be restored. She looked at me, understanding the metaphor. Am I going to be okay, Dad? Yes. You already are okay. You just don't feel it yet. Over the following days, we fell into a routine. Work during the day, restoration in the evenings. The clock became our shared project, our wordless therapy. Then one evening, Rebecca checked her email and went pale. Dad, you need to see this. It was a message from someone named Jennifer Morgan in San Diego. Dear Rebecca, I saw the news about Michael Crawford's arrest. I want you to know you're not alone. He did the same thing to me 3 years ago. He claimed he had terminal cancer, married me, gained access to my inheritance fund of $340,000, and disappeared. I never reported it to police because I was too ashamed. But seeing your father's courage in exposing him gave me strength to speak up now. I've contacted the San Diego DA's office with my evidence. Thank you for stopping him before he could hurt anyone else. Rebecca read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. There were others, she whispered. I wasn't the first. And because of what we did, you'll be the last, I said. Jennifer is getting justice now because you had the courage to face the truth. She showed the email to Detective Santos, who immediately forwarded it to California authorities. Jennifer's case added another dimension to the prosecution. Michael Crawford wasn't just a one-time fraudster, he was a serial predator. The district attorney, Robert Chang, called personally. Mr. Porter, this Jennifer Morgan evidence changes everything. We're pursuing enhanced charges, pattern of racketeering, organized fraud scheme. With California's charges and Arizona's charges combined, Crawford is looking at minimum 7 years, possibly up to 15. 7 years minimum. It felt like justice, cold and final. That night, Rebecca and I finished the anniversary clock. Every gear cleaned, every pivot oiled, every adjustment made. I wound it carefully, set the time, and released the pendulum. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The steady rhythm filled the workshop. The clock was alive again, functioning perfectly after decades of silence. Rebecca watched it, mesmerized. We fixed it. We did. Thank you, Dad, for everything. For not giving up on me even when I pushed you away. For protecting me even when I didn't want to be protected. I pulled her into a hug. That's what fathers do. Always have. Always will. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for early August in Maricopa County Superior Court. Rebecca didn't want to attend, but I convinced her it was important. You need to see this through, I told her. Not for him, for yourself, to close this chapter. We arrived at the courthouse together. Gerald Bennett met us outside, briefing us on what to expect. Crawford's attorney reached out to the DA yesterday. They want a plea deal. The evidence is too overwhelming to fight. What kind of deal? Rebecca asked. 7 years in Arizona State Prison, plus restitution. In exchange, he pleads guilty to reduced charges. Saves everyone a trial. Inside, the courtroom was formal and cold. Michael was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He looked diminished somehow, the charming facade completely gone. When his eyes found Rebecca, she looked away. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Chen, reviewed the charges. Insurance fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, fraud in the inducement of marriage. Mr. Crawford, you understand that by pleading guilty, you waive your right to trial? Yes, Your Honor. His voice was flat, defeated. And you understand the sentencing terms? 7 years in Arizona State Prison Complex, with credit for time served. Upon release, 5 years supervised probation. Restitution of $52,400 to Desert Valley Insurance, and $8,500 to Edward Porter for investigative costs. I understand. How do you plead? A long pause. Michael's jaw clenched. Then, guilty, Your Honor. The word echoed through the courtroom. Rebecca's hand found mine, squeezing tight. The prosecutor, Robert Chong, stood. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, but carried himself with authority. Your Honor, I want to acknowledge Mr. Edward Porter's role in this case. His investigation was thorough, professional, and provided our office with evidence that would have taken months to gather. His actions protected not only his daughter, but potentially dozens of future victims. The judge looked at me. Mr. Porter, would you like to address the court? I stood. Your Honor, I spent 38 years investigating insurance fraud. I've seen people fake injuries, stage accidents, fabricate claims, but this was different. This man didn't just commit fraud, he weaponized human compassion. He pretended to be dying to exploit my daughter's kindness. That's not just theft, it's emotional terrorism. Michael's shoulders hunched slightly. Good. He studied acting to perfect his performance. He created an elaborate web of fake documents, fake identities, fake medical conditions. And when the insurance money came through, he planned to vanish, leaving my daughter with a broken heart and possibly legal liability. The only reason we're here today is because I refused to let that happen. I turned to look directly at Michael. He met my eyes, and for a moment I saw something like shame there. 7 years isn't enough for what he's done, I continued, but it's justice, and it sends a message that people who prey on compassion will be caught. I sat down. The judge made some notes, then pronounced sentence. 7 years. Restitution as specified. Immediate remand to custody. As bailiffs led Michael away, he looked back once at Rebecca. She stared straight ahead, her face composed. The door closed behind him with a metallic clang. Outside the courthouse, a reporter from the Arizona Republic approached. Young woman, probably mid-20s, with a recording device. Mr. Porter, can I get a comment? I glanced at Rebecca. She nodded. My daughter fell in love with a man who claimed to be dying. She wanted to give him happiness in his final years. Instead, she got a con artist who saw her kindness as a weakness to exploit. I'm grateful we caught him, but I'm more grateful that my daughter is safe. How did you know he was faking? I thought back to the wedding. The steady champagne glass, the fundamental medical impossibility of his tremor pattern. People who fake illnesses usually make one mistake. They focus on the obvious symptoms, but miss the subtle details. I noticed those details, that's all. What would you say to others who might be targets of similar scams? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't let guilt or compassion blind you to facts. And remember, a real diagnosis comes with real medical records from real doctors who can be verified. Rebecca stepped forward. My father saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. I was ready to defend someone who was lying to me every single day. I want other people to know. It's okay to question. It's okay to protect yourself. Love shouldn't require you to ignore reality. The reporter thanked us and left. We stood on the courthouse steps, the August heat pressing down. It's really over, Rebecca said quietly. Yes, it's over. That evening, Susan Crawford called with news. Desert Valley Insurance is using the Crawford case as a training example. We're developing a whole module on recognizing medical fraud. Your investigation is the template. I'm glad something good comes from it. There's more. The board wants to offer you a consulting position. 10 hours a week, $6,500 a month. Your job would be teaching agents what you taught us, how to spot the subtle signs of fraud. I sat with that for a moment. I'd retired 3 years ago, ready to spend my days restoring clocks and playing chess. But this felt different. This felt like purpose. I'll do it, I said. Excellent. We'll send the paperwork over. After hanging up, I found Rebecca in the workshop. She was examining the anniversary clock we'd finished together. Dad, do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Yes, but you'll trust differently, more carefully. That's not a bad thing. I feel stupid for not seeing through him. Rebecca, you're 20% of the reason he's in prison. He's 80% of the reason. He was a professional. You were just someone trying to love. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never. Not possible. A week after the sentencing, life began settling into new rhythms. Rebecca continued therapy, returned to volunteering at the animal shelter, started reconnecting with friends she'd isolated from during her marriage. One morning, she announced she was looking at apartments. "You don't have to move out," I said. "I know, but I need to. Not because I want to leave you, because I need to prove to myself I can stand on my own again. Michael made me feel helpless. I need to feel capable. Then find a good place, but know you always have a home here." She hugged me, and I realized she was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. The consulting work at Desert Valley Insurance started the following week. I found myself in a conference room with 15 insurance agents, ranging from fresh graduates to 30-year veterans. On the screen behind me was Michael Crawford's mugshot. "This man," I began, "is currently serving 7 years for insurance fraud. He's also a cautionary tale. How many of you have processed disability claims?" All 15 hands went up. "How many of you have suspected fraud but couldn't prove it?" 12 hands stayed up. That's the challenge. Legitimate claimants deserve support, but fraudsters exploit our reluctance to question sick people. They count on our empathy, our discomfort with confrontation. Michael Crawford counted on that. He nearly got away with $850,000. I walked them through the case, the suspicious timing of the insurance policy, the medical impossibility of his symptom pattern, the fake medication bottles, the acting lessons, the offshore accounts. "The key," I explained, "is attention to detail. PSP patients have resting tremors that worsen with stress. Crawford's tremors appeared during movement, the opposite pattern. That single inconsistency started my investigation." A young agent raised her hand. "How do you balance skepticism with compassion?" Good question. Compassion means helping people who genuinely need it. But enabling fraud isn't compassion, it's negligence. Real compassion is protecting the system so legitimate claimants get the support they deserve. Every fraudulent payout is money stolen from people who actually need help. I showed them surveillance footage Victor had captured. Michael running on the treadmill, lifting weights, walking normally when he thought he was alone. The contrast with his wheelchair performance was stark. Document everything. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. But gather facts before making accusations. In this case, we had video evidence, financial records, background checks, and medical expert testimony. That's not paranoia. That's due diligence. The session ran 2 hours. Afterward, several agents came up with their own suspicious cases, asking for advice. I realized this work mattered. Not just catching one fraud, preventing dozens. That evening, Rebecca and I sat in the backyard. The Arizona sunset painted the sky orange and purple. She had iced tea. I had scotch. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "When did you know? Really know, not just suspect?" I thought back to the wedding, that crucial moment. At the reception, when Michael held his champagne glass. People with PSP have a specific type of tremor. It's called resting tremor. The hands shake when relaxed, but stabilize during purposeful movement. Michael's hands were perfectly steady when he held that glass still, but when he reached for something, they trembled. That's backwards. Impossible for real PSP. I took a sip of scotch. I've investigated hundreds of PSP cases. Legitimate ones. I knew the medical reality. Michael studied the disease, but he missed one crucial detail, and that detail saved you. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. He almost destroyed me, but he didn't. You're here. You're healing. You're stronger than he ever was. Am I? Yes, because when life knocked you down, you got back up. Michael got knocked down and is spending 7 years in prison. You're here, making plans, rebuilding. That's strength. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. I'm going to be okay, aren't I? You already are. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Porter? This is Jennifer Morgan, from San Diego, the woman who'd emailed Rebecca, Michael's previous victim. Ms. Morgan, how can I help you? I wanted to thank you. Because of your investigation, the San Diego DA is reopening my case. They found evidence that connects to a larger fraud network. Michael wasn't working alone. There are at least 3 others running similar scams across California, Nevada, and Arizona. That's excellent news. It's more than that. You gave me courage to speak up. For 3 years, I was too ashamed to report what happened. I thought I was stupid for being fooled. But seeing how thoroughly he fooled your daughter, a good person with a smart, protective father, I realized it wasn't my fault. He was just that good at lying. You're not alone, and now he can't hurt anyone else. Thank you, Mr. Porter, for your daughter, for me, for everyone he might have targeted next. After we hung up, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by antique clocks in various states of repair, each one broken in its own way, each one waiting for patient hands to restore it to function. I picked up a 1936 mantel clock I'd been working on. The mainspring was broken, the escapement damaged. It would take weeks to fix, but it was fixable. Everything was fixable with enough patience and skill. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Found an apartment. 15 minutes from you. Moving in next month. Love you, Dad. I smiled. She was moving forward, healing, building a new life from the wreckage Michael had left behind. I wound the anniversary clock on my workbench, the one Rebecca and I had restored together. Its steady tick-tock filled the quiet room, a reminder that broken things could work again. The time heals, but only if you keep moving. Michael Crawford was in prison. Rebecca was recovering. Justice had been served, measured and complete. And me? I had my daughter back. I had purpose in my new consulting work. I had the satisfaction of knowing that one con artist would never hurt anyone again. Sometimes that's all the victory you need. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.